What's going on, guys? Dots here, and today I'm bringing you an update to my Umbra Magicka Nightblade PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online Deadlands patch. So I have to say, this was one of the builds that got the most attention on my YouTube channel and on my website last patch, and you guys really did enjoy the build, which made me extremely happy to see. But one of the questions that I got asked about the most was, Dots, how are you going to be updating this build for Deadlands with the basic neutering of the mechanical acuity set? And we have updated the build for the patch. I'm extremely happy with this new updated build. Obviously, damage is going to be a little bit lower than it was previously. Mechanical acuity was just a ginormous source of damage that we no longer unfortunately have, and plus they did put a cap on crit hit damage, and so because of that we did lose a bit of offensive prowess to that. But with the way that they changed the Grim Focus ability, where it now gives you spell damage and weapon damage, I decided to, instead of going for like a crit damage focus build, go for a spell damage focus build and really stack up that spell damage super high. But the good thing is that with that new critical damage cap, we do actually brush up right against it with the amount of crit amps that we have in the build. So you will still be doing a stupid amount of critical damage coming out of stealth, and so you still do maintain some of that crit damage prowess that the version of the build had previously. But now also with the spell damage being super high, we also are going to have much better healing because of that as well. So the build has much improved the defensive capability compared to the way it did last patch, and the offense is still very much there. You still deal a stupid amount of damage, and this build is insanely fun. But guys, like I do always say, this is just what I like, what I use, and what works for me. If you'd like to change something about this build, feel free to go right ahead. This is just what I have personally found success with. But really quick, guys, before we actually get into the build today, I just want to talk really quick about a company that I am affiliated with called ESO Racing. They are the company that makes the chair that I use, and I really can't recommend their chairs enough. I've had a lot of viewers buy this chair. I've had friends that I have in real life buy this chair, and they all love it a ton. I've gotten nothing but really good feedback on this. I've been using this chair for years, and I'm at my desk for a lot of hours, obviously because of content creation, and it's an extremely comfortable chair to sit in. And what's really good is that if you guys do buy through my link in the description below and use code DOTS at checkout, you get a gigantic 30% off your order. You heard me correct, 30%. It is a huge amount of savings to get on a chair, and so I definitely recommend, if you're looking for a really nice ergonomic chair to spend some long hours gaming in, taking a look at the ESO Racing chairs, and you can find that link again in the description below. But now, without further ado, let's get back into the video. But now, kicking things off, we are still running 2 pieces of Slime Craw for the crit as well as the minor berserk. Just a flat damage amp helps us push our damage a bit higher on all of our tooltips and just push damage more against our opponents. So a very good 2-piece for us. Plus that line of crit is actually super nice. We get really solid crit chance in the build with 39% crit chance. I mean, we do get auto crits coming out of Cloak, but still having 39% chance even outside of Cloak is extremely helpful to be able to push our damage nice and high. Now, the new 5-piece that replaced our mechanical acuity is going to be 5 pieces of War Maiden. This gives us a line of crit, a line of magicka, a line of spell damage, and this gives us 579 spell damage to our magic damage abilities, which, as a Magicka Nightblade, all of our abilities are magic damage type. This is a gigantic amount of spell damage. It is huge, and it plays really well into the spell damage stack that we are going for, and between all of our glyphs and things and major sorcery, like, we push our spell damage super high in this build, and War Maiden helps enable that and enables that damage. Now, we still do run 5 pieces of spinners. Spinners, I think, is really important for a build like this because, again, we're trying to kill people as quickly as possible. We are throwing caution to the wind, going full send damage, and so because of that, we need to make sure that we can raise the number of people that we can just kill instantaneously, basically, and kill quickly. And so by running penetration, you essentially lower the amount of people that will be able to kind of defend themselves from you, because you're going to be penning through most of their armor. Because with spinners and with major breach from this build, you sit at about 20k spell pen. It is a lot of penetration. Plus, the 2 through 4 lines are extremely good, give you extra magicka and extra damage. We do run inner light on the front bar, so those magicka amps is actually super helpful, because as you can see, our magicka did go up to 43k this patch. So spinners is an extremely good front bar piece, front bar set for the build. Back bar, we still do run that Maelstrom Resto staff. This is really, really good for giving us extra sustain in the build. We do run at a stage 3 vampire for the undeath passive, as well as strike from shadows when we come out of cloak, which gives us another 300 spell damage coming out of cloak. And so this will give us the sustain that we need on top of being a Breton to allow us to sustain being such a high vampire stage. Now, in terms of the way that we have the build set up, we are running a 5-1-1, 1 heavy, 1 medium, and 5 light. I run 5 Impen on the body and 2 Divines. This is just to give us a tiny bit of extra Magicka recovery from our Mundus Stone. If you do not feel that you need this, what I would instead do is maybe run an infused helmet and an infused chest, and then just change the shoulder to Impen instead for more Magicka and for a little bit more damage. That is also an option as well. I run triple arcane, triple spell damage at the moment. I very much want to change these to infused. So run arcane or infused. It's up to you. Arcane will, work really well with inner light, but infused will push that spell damage even higher and allow you to deal more damage with all of the amps that we have. So you can really do whatever choice you want there for your trait. We run a Nirn-honed mace with a shot glyph on the front bar and a sharpened sword with a frost damage glyph. And then we also do have a defending resto staff with that berserker glyph to allow us to proc that spell damage and increase that by another 350. Now, so actually let me address this. People ask, Dots, why did you run dual wield? So they changed the way that light attacks worked a couple patches ago, where now light attacks scale off of your highest resource. So the light attacks that come from these dual wield weapons will scale with magic and spell damage. But the reason that we run dual wield, even though we don't run any dual wield skills, is for the passive twin blade and blunt. So our mace is going to give us an additional 1650 pen, and the sword is going to give us 142 spell damage. That is why we run twin blade and blunt. Our dual wield for twin blade and blunt. It also just, I'm not gonna lie, dual wield mag blade also just looks super badass. It feels so much better to use it with what's it called, with concealed as opposed to a staff. It also just looks super badass. And so we do run twin blade and blunt for that reason. I also do put points into ruffian and dual wield expert. This is also another important one to give us another 6% spell damage as a part of our offhanded weapon. So very important to grab this passive as well. But that is why we run dual wield, so I really actually just wanted to discuss that before we move into our skills. With our first skill being Concealed Weapon, an 11.7k unbuffed tooltip. And we also will stun enemies if we hit them from a flank for 3 seconds and set them off balance. And this also increases our stealth movement speed by 25%. Now, the cool thing about this build as well is that because we are a stage 3 vampire, or just a vampire in general, we do not have any movement speed penalty when we are in sneak or we are invisible. On top of that, we also have a source of major expedition in the builds from channel deceleration. So we move extremely fast when we are stealthed, and concealed weapon really, really helps enable that. And we also run a new CP passive that gives us even more movement speed. And so when we are stealthed, we are just absolutely booking it. So we move really quickly. We also do run Crippling Grasp. Crippling Grasp is kind of serves 2 purposes for us. It is a dot for the build. Obviously, does an initial magic damage, 13.4k over 10 seconds. Gives us a 2-second immobilize and reduces our target's movement speed by 30%. So I run Crippling Grasp for a couple of reasons. Number 1, it is a siphoning skill for the front bar, which allows me to gain benefit from Magicka Flood for 8% additional Magicka. I also run this as a way to chase down targets. Even though we are really fast, sometimes you have a pesky Mag Sork that just really wants to shriek away forever. Crippling Grasp really helps you kind of catch them, gives them that nice root, and just helps you kind of catch up to your opponents. On top of that, there are people that you are going to run into that you're not going to be able to kill with your one-hit combo. So, there are a lot of tanky builds out there. People build real beefy, and Crippling Grasp, I have personally felt, gives me that tiny bit of consistent pressure that I need to be able to push those targets over the edge with our concealed weapon and, bow spam from Merciless Resolve. The dot from Crippling Grasp just gives me that extra oomph I need to push over my targets. And speaking of which, we do run, obviously, Merciless Resolve. So we focus our senses for 40 seconds, increasing our spell damage by 60 every time we light or heavy attack, up to 5 times. Is a huge boost to our spell damage. And then while active, hitting an enemy with 5 light or heavy attacks will convert this to Assassin's Will, allowing you to fire a 24k spectral bow and heal for 50% of the damage done. This is where your burst is coming from. You combine this with Soul Harvest. So Soul Harvest will deal deal 18.7k magic damage and increase your damage against your targets by 20% for 6 seconds, on top of also giving us major defile on our opponents and gaining ultimate if we do successfully kill our target. So we gain ultimate from Catalyst to drink a potion, 20 ultimate, and then we can gain 10 ultimate when we kill people with Soul Harvest, so we can just constantly have this up. But the good thing is that this increases our damage by 20%. So you basically can use this before you bow and increase the bow damage by an additional 20%, which is just a ludicrous amount of damage. So you're able to burst people down super hard in this build. We also do have Shadowy Disguise. This is going to be our cloak. This puts us in stealth. And we also will have an automatic crit if we just like attack somebody out of stealth. So it guarantees crit. We run a lot of crit amps on our CP too. So this is really useful for us to just guarantee those critical strikes. Plus our crit chance is 39%. It's pretty high. So you can take advantage of the crit amps that we have in the CP as well really nicely. We also do have Inner Light. This is going to give us that source of major prophecy that we need, as well as giving us some extra Magicka. We do run a pretty hefty Magicka pool in this build, and so I feel like Inner Light's just a really good way to get some percent amps. It's also really nice to be able to get other Nightblades out of Cloak and just annoy the shit out of them. So very good front barable skill here to give us a little bit more passive damage. On that back bar, we have Reaper's Mark. This is going to be our source of major breach. 6k pen for 20 seconds, but also when a marked enemy dies, you get healed for 16k damage, or excuse me, you get healed for 16k health, and you gain Major Berserk for 5 seconds. That is 10% increased damage for 5 seconds. You are going to be hitting like an absolute truck during that burst window. So if you are in a BG or something, you mark, the weakest target, you kill them for 5 seconds, you just are going to go on a killing spree and just rip everybody apart. So Reaper's Mark is extremely good for that reason. You could run Piercing if you want to annoy other Nightblades, but personally I find Reapers to be more beneficial. Siphoning attacks is here not only again for another siphoning skill for Magicka Flood, but this is also going to be a big portion of our sustain and healing, giving us 1500 health whenever we light attack and 100 Magicka as well for 20 seconds. And then we restore up to 40 to 70 additional Magicka when the effect ends, based on how long siphoning attacks was active, very similarly to how Rally works with its heal. We also do run Rapid Regen as our primary heal. 21k tooltip over 5 seconds. Now, one of the great things that happened with this patch, I think was a really good thing, is that Magblade's got a burst heal. We now have Healthy Offering, so you can heal yourself for 12k healing while draining 1,000 health from you over 3 seconds. This also does give you Minor Mending for 8 seconds, increasing your healing done by 8%. Now, while this is a pretty good skill, don't get me wrong, and I think for maybe like a more traditional, like, Brawly, Destro, Staff, Swallow Soul Nightblade, this might be good to use. I feel like for this build, it really isn't. Because if you look, this costs 2484 and heals me for 21k. This costs me 3200 and heals me for 12k. It's kind of like a no-brainer which skill I want to use there for the heal. This also allows me to run the Maelstrom Resto Staff. And plus, again, typically, like, what I'll be doing is, like, if I'm in here fighting somebody, right? If I have my shade down. If I'm in here fighting somebody, whatever. If I'm taking a lot of damage, again, I'm not trying to brawl in this build. So I'm just going to poof, heal, and then cloak. And I'm going to be sitting here cloaked the whole time. And so that'll allow me to be healed while I'm cloaked. Like, Rapid Regen will heal me while I'm cloaked. I don't need to, poof back, burst heal myself 2-3 times and then cloak. Like, the Rapid Regen will actively heal me while I'm cloaked because it's such a huge part of our defensive, kit. And so because of that, I just find Rapid Regen to be a bit better. Shadow Image is going to be one of the most important skills in the build. This is going to give us another magic damage dot, applies minor maim to our enemies, but the most important part is that while the shade is summoned, we can port back to it. Again, this is not a brawl build. You are going to have, decent impen. You got 1940 impen. Resistances are actually pretty decent for a build like this. But and you still have Undeath. You have Undeath too. But at the end of the day, this is not a tanky build. Okay? So in situations where things get hairy, you are going to use this to poof out and get away. It is by far the most important skill in the kit, and mastery of Shade is going to be crucial to playing this build correctly, especially because I don't run a form of Snare and Root Immunity. I don't personally feel the build needs it, and so Shade kind of like assumes that role. So it's going to be important for survivability and defense. It's going to be important for kiting. It's just a very, very important skill that I recommend spending some time and practicing with. You can do some really tricky stuff with this, and when you like really learn how to use Shadow Image, it is just an insanely fun skill. It's super super fun. So definitely recommend getting some good practice with this. We do use channeled acceleration. That's going to give us 30 seconds of minor force for increased crit damage 10%, as well as 12 seconds of increased movement speed. I do feel like this is still good over race against time. I get a lot of major expedition, and so I'm able to move super fast while I'm stealthed. On top of that, we get the extra crit damage for a really long time, so I don't have to like what's it called, like refresh this bonus a lot. It's just, you know, up a ton. And again, I don't really feel like I need the standard root immunity since Shade kind of already takes care of that. But on top of that, we also get some good passives from this too. Deliberation, I think, is pretty interesting to be able to use. I mean, you get concentrated barrier for the ability to block, but the cool thing about Deliberation is that while you are casting or channeling a Sigil Order ability, you actually get a 30% unique damage debuff. Or excuse me, damage reduction buff. And so I have very niche, very niche, what I have before, if I'm worried about taking a lot of damage from like range, I'll just like channel a channeled acceleration real quick and like get 30% damage reduction before I go into cloak. You know, it's a really good way to kind of just give yourself some free damage reduction. It's very niche, won't come up all that much. But it's just like a little cool tricky thing that you can do. And yeah, so I like it for that reason. We also do run Lights Champion. This is going to be our defensive ultimate if shit hits the fan and we need to heal ourselves. We also do get major force from this for 8 seconds. So the good thing is that, if shit hits the fan and you need to heal, you could Lights Champion, prevent yourself from dying, but literally swap bars, go into stealth, and just gank somebody out of stealth with concealed weapon. And your gank out of stealth is going to deal 20% increased damage from that major force. Even more if you also have minor force up too. So definitely the best back bar ultimate for the build. Highly recommend. Now, in terms of our stat pool, we're going to be rocking 43k maximum magic at 25.7k maximum health and now 17k stamina, 17.7k. We really increased our resource pools a lot going into this patch with my new buff food choice, so I'm really happy. Playing with 14k stamina last patch was a bit rough, but now that we have 17k, it feels so much easier to play and is way more relaxing. We have about 1,500 Magicka recoveries, more than enough for me. 3,800 unbuffed spell damage. We got, again, this is actually 15k. Part of our pen comes from, I just don't want people to think that the numbers are weird. It comes from a Master Assassin. When you hit somebody from a flank, you get an additional 3k pen. That's why you saw this against, okay, see here it is, 15, and then it went back to 12. You will always be attacking from the flank, so you will always have that 20k pen between Mark and between that one passive. Then you have 15.2k spell resist with 9.3 on the front physical, and then you go back to with Shade up for our shadow passives, 24.4k spell resist and 18.5k physical with 1900 critical resistance. We run the Atronach Mundus Stone for some extra recovery. We did used to run Witch Mother's Potent Brew in the past, but I don't really feel like that's necessary anymore. I preferred to instead go for recovery from the Atronach and then grab Bewitched Sugar Skulls as my buff food. Recovery is about the same as it was last patch. I think like my recovery on this build is maybe like another 30 or 40 higher, but like all my other stat pools are now significantly higher as well. So I think that this was a really good move, Bewitched and Atronach now, but again, we're still Vampire stage 3. This will allow us to get Undeath, Strike from the Shadows, as well as the movement, remove the movement penalty. If you don't know what Undeath is either, this is reduce your damage taken by up to 30% based on your missing HP. This is a lot of tankiness, so it's very strong and can even keep this more squishy build a bit on the tanky side. All points into Magicka. We use spell power potions, if I can actually open my menu. We use Essence of Spell Power for Major Sorcery, Major Prophecy, and Restore Magicka. And then in terms of our race for this build, I personally recommend playing a Breton. I think Breton's really strong. I really like the extra sustain that comes from it. But I also kind of like, I 1vx on this build and I, fight outnumbered on this. If you're looking to just say, you know what, Dots, I don't need that much sustain, little bit much for me. I want to go full bore damage, full send, no holds barred. Heart, eyes clear, hearts full, I want a full send, then I would change this maybe to something like the High Elf. I think High Elf would be really good. Get some extra stamina sustain, get still the extra Magicka, but you get another, I think, like 250 something spell damage. So that'd be a way to push your DPS even higher. I don't necessarily think I'd go Khajiit. You could if you want to for the extra crit damage, but we brush up against the crit cap already, even without Khajiit. So I think Khajiit would be largely unnecessary. So I would personally go with the High Elf if you're looking to maybe take the sustain down a little bit, because I know I run the sustain a little bit higher on this. So if you want to take that down and run more damage, just change it to the High Elf and you'll pretty much be good to go. All right, so now moving into our champion points. We are still pretty much running the exact same CP loadout that we did last patch. We have Backstabber for 15% crit damage from a flank, Fighting Finesse, 10% crit damage from a flank, or just crit damage in general, excuse me. Deadly Aim, 10% single target damage done. All of our stuff is single target. And then Mastered Arms for 10% direct damage, which most of our stuff, especially our burst, is. We have to run Boundless Vitality, 1400 extra health. Rejuvenation for 90 extra recoveries across the board. We run Relentlessness for 10% major protection for 3 seconds after we're stunned or feared for 10% damage reduction. This is very important. We're going to be taking the most damage when we are CC'd. This is a squishy build, and so we want the most protection right after we're crowd controlled, and that's what Relentlessness does give us. And then we also do run Celerity for 10% increased movement speed at all times. For a build like this is an amazing, amazing passive, and is what allows us to move so fast inside of stealth. Now, guys, in terms of rotation for this build, you're basically going to want to maintain on yourself Channeled Acceleration, Shadow Image, and Siphoning Attacks while maintaining Reaper's Mark on your opponent. You also want to maintain Merciless Resolve on yourself. So, you know, assuming you have everything up, this, and then this. Typically, what I will do is I will normally just start in stealth, walk up to somebody, and then surprise attack them. Just light attack weave with a concealed weapon, and basically do that until I get the bow, and then fire off the bow. If I have Soul Harvest up, I'll come out of stealth and use Soul Harvest, and then you either follow it up with light attack concealed, or if I have the bow, use the bow. Typically, when I'm actually entering a fight for the first time, I won't actually use Reaper's Mark, because Reaper's Mark is like a, hey, you're about to get ganked right now, bro. You know, like, and so I don't like to use that immediately. Typically, what I'll do, again, if, you know, let's say I have everything up, all my stuff up, right, and I go in to gank somebody, and it fails, I will poof back, light attack Reaper's Mark, crippling grasp, stealth. And then go back into, you know, concealed weapon, soul harvest, and bow eventually, and all that stuff. But that's like, I typically use mark or mark and grasp for when there's somebody that, like, okay, I'm having a little bit of trouble killing this guy. You can get away, I think, a little bit more pre-marking in BGs because there's, you know, a lot more chaos in Battlegrounds. But if you're in open world, again, this is just like a, you know, you're like ringing a bell telling someone like, hey, you're about to get ganked, you know? So I don't really recommend pre-using that when you're in open world. And then, like I said, defensively, your goal is going to be, you know, kiting back with Shadow Image, rapid regen into stealth. You know, obviously then using Light Champion if things do get desperate. But guys, I think on that note, that is pretty much going to be it for me today. The updated build for the Magicka Nightblade. Really, really, really happy with how this came out, man. And I hope you guys do enjoy the new update. And this was, again, a big fan build from last patch. So I hope you guys do enjoy this one. And if you do, please smack a like on it. It really does help me with that YouTube algorithm. Any questions about the build, feel free to leave a comment below. You can also find a written version on my website, dotsgaming.com. And for more ESO builds, as well as other MMO content, please hit that sub button as well as hit the bell to keep those notifications on. So thank you guys so much for stopping by today. I do very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dots Gaming. I'll see you all in the next video.